Hi everyone, this is George Williams, also known as GOL, from Laughman Productions Squared, and welcome to the official YouTube channel for Odyssian Void. I'm currently the lead and only developer for the game, and what this video is going to be about is talking about the game, about current states and what's going to be about the history of the game, and a couple of other things, including what this channel is going to be used for. Video will probably be about 35 to 40 minutes long, maybe a little bit less, depends. I actually am doing a different format for this than I had originally planned. Originally, I was going to include all the different stuff that I wanted to cover in this one video, but it's turning out just to be way too long. Video would be like between 6.5 and 9 hours long, literally. And that's just because there's so much information to go over. For example, I'm using a Word document here that I have stuff written down in, kind of, sort of like a script, but also not. It's more like an outline in some areas, more like an outline in some areas, more like a script in some other areas. And this whole thing is 40 pages long. It's 21,585 words long, so it's not enough. It would just take way too much time to fit it into this video. So this video will be just about these first couple topics, and then all the rest of the stuff will be put in other videos that will be released as time goes on. So if you don't want to stick around for all that, though, you can get a really just kind of basic understanding of what the game is going to be like by going to our G+ page. On the About tab in the introduction section, there's a bit about the game. I think I list the games that I'm using as inspirational points, as well as talk about the battle system, I think. And not really a lot about it, but I do mention maybe about a tenth of the information that we'll have in those videos on the battle system in this series of videos that's in there. That's only a tiny little chunk of the rest of everything that's going to be in these videos. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So the game's name is Odyssian Void, as you know. It's formerly known as Space Crusade. It's an early alpha open world Forex game that will be extremely ambitious and encompass many different forms of gameplay. Now I want to go over a couple things. First of all is a name change. Space Crusade was okay as a name, but it was kind of generic in a way, I guess. I didn't quite bring the mental imagery that I wanted to kind of inspire with the title of the game, so that's why I wanted to change it for the most part. Secondarily to that, though, there was another reason, and that's because it's a registered trademark by Milton Bradley. They made a board game by that name based in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, like 1998 or something. I only learned about it like in 2013, I think mid-2013. So I figured I better change the name just in case. And I couldn't figure out what to change it to, so I decided to just kind of, I'll see if I can figure out something. Couldn't, stop. And then I figured, well, I need to get the Google Plus page up, so I made the logo for it, and I had an idea of what I wanted the logo to be. I wanted it to be kind of essentially two characters, one inside of the other, and kind of have a interesting kind of symmetry to it, if you will, in terms of both the actual object and the shapes that it created when you combine the two letters. And I tried a bunch of different combinations, and then came upon O with a V inside of it. And that looked pretty awesome in my opinion, so I figured, well, we'll just stick with that and I'll figure out what the name of the game should be based on that. So the actual logo came before the name was decided. V was always going to stand for Void. I knew that right off the bat because it's less used synonym for space, but still something that people that are into Forex games will instantly recognize as space, or describing something that's space-like. Like a vacuum or space or what have you. The Odyssian part of it, though, is a little bit hard to come across or to figure out. I spent probably about 2 weeks trying to think of a word that started with O that would evoke the mental imagery that I'd wanted to evoke with the name, and I couldn't think of one. So I figured, I'll figure it out sometime later because it was just had too much rattling around inside my head at that point in time, and I had to kind of refocus on other things. So, as about probably a week after that, maybe a week and a half after that, I was sitting watching the Odyssey, and I was thinking, you know what, Odyssian Void. That sounds like it could be interesting. And I thought it'd be a perfect, Odyssian would be a perfect metaphor for the universe in the game because it just kind of encompasses all the different characteristics of what I want the universe to have, which is unpredictability, just really kind of insane in terms of the the danger that is present, the potential for discovery and exploration, and just the sheer possibilities of it. That's pretty much what I thought would kind of represent that the most was Odyssian. That's how Odyssian Void came to be. So now let's talk about a few things, other things from that opening statement paragraph thing. First, I want to talk about early alpha. Now, this is going to go more into the state of the game. I'll call it regular game development because I don't think I'm doing it by a regular process at all. So, in regular game development, you have 3 main stages of development during development of a game. And that is the alpha stage or phase, the beta phase, and then release. Alpha is where you are making like the framework of the game, putting in stuff, getting what you want in there to be in there. Beta is more about fleshing out what's in there with more stuff and balancing, as well as bug testing it more thoroughly. And then release is when it's ready to be released for general purchasing and use and whatnot. After that, you also have the maintenance phase. Well, it's not really technically part of the development cycle in the software development life cycle. And just to kind of give you an overhead of that without giving you a 400 level course on it, the software development life cycle, or SDLC, is basically just a set of standards, I guess, or processes through which you go to create software. You have the first is the requirements gathering phase, or requirements solicitation, depending on how fancy you want to get with the terminology. Then you have the design phase, the development phase, which is where all the coding and stuff happens. Then you have testing. Then, depending on how you're applying it, there's also installation. That's more of like for enterprise kind of stuff. And then you have maintenance. Maintenance is where you are dealing with bugs that come up, dealing with bugs that were already there that have been found that didn't get caught, bugs that are arising from new software or hardware that are causing unforeseen consequences. Not Half-Life style unforeseen consequences, but bugs and things nonetheless. And also developing new versions of the program, patches, and possibly expansions to that program or game. And so pretty much all of game development actual development of the game falls within the design phase, or rather the development phase. And so the normal stages are, again, alpha, beta, release, and maybe some form of iterative maintenance where you are making expansions or adding in new content or what have you. For how I'm making this game, though, there's actually an extra stage in there, and that is pre-alpha. And for pre-alpha, that's more of a kind of a design phase, if you will, but I'm also coding while I'm doing that. So as I'm coding the game, I'm also thinking of how the game should be created. Kind of putting the cart before the horse, but at the same time, it kind of works for this game because there are some things that I would not have thought about needing if I hadn't already been making the game and seen something happening and thought, it'd be really good if I could do this. Oh wait, why don't I just set it in? So that's the reason why I'm going with that. Plus, because I'm doing it this way because it's a little less intensive the way I'm doing it. the pre-development on the game, because I'm doing it inside of the Windows Command Line Interface, CLI, or just Windows Console. CLI is for, Windows users 98 and before. So that's what it used to be called. So it's all essentially being output as text, and so it's a lot easier to not only make, because you don't have to deal with all the graphics and audio and physics and all that other stuff that's in a game engine, but you also have an easier time debugging it because you don't have to go through possibly millions of lines of extraneous code that have nothing to do with the game. So it's allowing me to do things a little bit quicker, although I should, just kind of laugh at that because it's not been that quick at all recently. Not for just because it's taking a long time to code it, just because I can't find the time to actually work on it. So I'm essentially juggling 2 full-time jobs, if you will. Well, one's not really a full-time job, but I'm acting as if it is. But so I don't really have like a lot of spare time to work on things, along with working on stuff for the YouTube channel. But right now it's in pre-alpha, version 0.5 build 5 is the currently released version. I'm working on 0.6 right now, and have been for a little while. Well, actually a long time. So that's pretty much where the game is at right now. As for where it's going to go in the future, eventually we'll get to build Alpha 1.0 or A 1.0. That'll be the first version of the game that'll be inside of a game engine. And if you want to learn what game engine we're going to be using, that'll be in the engine video series, or just video, I don't know. Depends on how long it is. And so you can go watch that to find out. But that'll be the first version in the engine. Also, probably at that point, put it up on Steam Greenlight. Or rather, probably, Greenlight, I guess Greenlight is early access in a way, so. But it would be an early access title. It would just be like $5 to get into it, and that's really just to cover the cost of the engine license. After that, though, version 2 will be our beta version. So it'll be B 2.0. And then version 3, internally it'll be version 3, externally it'll be version 1. That'll be a release version. So we still got a ways to go. But I'm hoping in the pre-alpha stage, in the 0.whatever A's, 0.x A's, I'm hoping to get most of the stuff I want in the game into the game, and then only have the stuff that can't be implemented without a game engine being there whenever we get into the game engine itself. Things like dealing with like real-time battle situations, ammo consumption over real periods of time, that kind of stuff, real-time economies, that kind of thing. That can only be done inside of an engine, a game engine. Well, you could do it potentially in console, but it would take a lot of code, whereas the game engine already has a lot of that code in place. So yeah. So right now it's basically a text RPG, which is, kind of annoying at times, but adding stuff all the time and still working on it. As for when these different versions are coming out, I don't know, who knows. It'll be done when it's done, to quote Black Mesa Sources team. Their favorite line was that. It'll be done when it's done. But my current plan is that 0.6 should be done probably by, I want to say, March to April of next year. Somewhere in there, hopefully. After that, 0.7 probably will be out maybe towards the end of next year, maybe early 2018. 0.9 hopefully maybe mid 2018 to early 2018, depending on when 07 releases. And for 09, hopefully maybe mid to late 2018, with the first beta version being released in 2019 to maybe early 2020, depending on how long it takes to put everything into a game engine and get things working. Now, of course, all those time frames are if this remains a one-person project. If I get people that either get or hire or contract with people that want to work on mapping or modeling, world modeling kind of stuff for the engine, or texturing, which I guess we have modeling, audio, scripting, coding, whatever, then it might go a little bit faster. Probably would go a lot faster, but if it remains a one-person project, that's what I'm predicting. So, let's go ahead and talk about the last main point here, and that is the many different forms of gameplay. So when you heard that, you probably thought, well, duh, it's a game. Of course there's going to be many different forms of gameplay. All games have different forms of gameplay. And I meant the obvious sense of that, but I also meant something not quite so obvious. If you ever played Spellforce or Spellforce 2, you'll know what I'm talking about with this, but in that game, they have essentially two different modes. Essentially, it's really two different game genres that you can choose to go to between at will. One of them is a top-down RTS style gameplay system. The other one is more of a Skyrim third-person. Not sure if they have first-person camera, but they do have third-person. More action-based RPG. And that's kind of what I'm aiming for with this game, except just, to the nth degree more insane. So essentially what will happen is that there'll be different modes of battle, essentially. That's where the differences will happen at. And it will be depending on what's going on, the situation. It's situation-based kind of battle genre-changing system, if you will. Without getting into it too deep, because we'll go over all the more extraneous, deep-level details on different set of videos, but essentially what I have planned is that there will be essentially two different major modes for battling while you're in your ship. So ship-to-ship combat, or ship-to-station combat, or whatever. You'll have regular kind of in the cockpit or behind the ship with a camera, like EVE Online, in the cockpit like X-Series style of ship-to-ship battle. You also have a more RTS style ship-to-ship battle with legitimately just true RTS style gameplay. Bases, unit production, maybe tech trees, maybe not. Tech trees might be essentially swapped out for the skill system, or for whatever you're currently producing. Like, for example, if you have, I don't know. I think it wouldn't be so much as, I still really haven't figured out how this particular point would work as far as the tech trees go, whether or not to have them. Because maybe what I'm thinking is maybe have it so that you spend resources to essentially upgrade ships or to build new classes of ships, but don't really have any kind of requirements other than resources. And I guess, yes, use the skill system to kind of deal with that a little bit. But at the same time, that's a little bit too limiting, and I'll have to think about it. No, actually, I think that's probably what I'll do. We'll have the skill system, and you'll essentially be only able to build ships that you can, that you've researched through. Maybe there'll be a particular set of skills that'll deal just with RTS battle production, unit production, or something like that. Or maybe it'll just be dependent on what ships you can personally fly or something. So I'm still trying to figure that part out. I'll go more into it in the gameplay videos. But you'll have that. There's also going to be more of an FPS style of gameplay during planet annexation, where you'll actually will be, essentially playing an FPS style mission, where you'll, essentially first person with a gun, HUD, Call of Duty kind of stuff, trying to take over the planet by completing different missions and getting a certain values to certain levels. And the first person, it'll be third person, first person FPS kind of thing. Well, FPS, TPS, I guess, technically. You'll have the choice of whichever mode you want. That will also extend into, though, anytime you're not within your ship. Anytime you're not in your ship, you will have the chance of having yourself thrown right into a battle. And it won't just be like random. There'll be specific reasons for why it will happen, but it will be at random at that point. So it's not like you're just going to step on a station the first time and someone's going to come up and shoot you or something. It'll be more like you piss somebody off and they send a hitman after you, or they send some mercenaries after you or something to capture you or kill you or what have you. Or maybe you have a bounty on your head and some bounty hunters coming after you. And also during exploration of derelict ships and stations, you'll also have the potential of running into pirates and other space creatures and whatnot on those things. So it's going to be a very kind of fluid and dynamic, fluidic, I guess, type of system where you can be thrown into battle at any time. And you'll also be able to do kind of pretty much anything while you're not in your ship. So, like, for example, if you're on a station, maybe just on a whim you want to go hack a terminal or something and try to get access to maybe a bank account, or sabotage somebody's shop or production facilities or what have you, you'll be able to do that. But if you're caught, then, you know, that whole thing where you get thrown into a battle situation happens and you have to flee the station, whether you're being attacked by the station security or by you know, private security owned by that particular corporation or entity that you're trying to whose store you try to hack. Pretty much everything in the game is going to have some impact on some other portion of the game. It's not going to be a situation where you can you know, there won't be any kind of consequences for your actions. It'll be a very consequence punishment kind of thing, if you will, system that'll be in place. Action and consequence, I guess. It's better to put it. So that's what I mean by many different forms of gameplay. There's going to be multiple genres at play at different points in the game, depending on different situations. There will be some other game modes I didn't mention, and you'll have to watch the battle gameplay videos to learn those. So that's pretty much all there is for that first part. Let's go ahead and talk about where the game came from, and then I'll close out with talking about what this channel will be used for, and then we'll go from there. So, I started making the game back in October of 2007. I'd just been learning C++ coding since I think it was July of that year, so it was only about 3.5 months or so. It was an RPG game for a competition that I was participating in at GameInstitute.com. And GameInstitute.com is essentially an online university or school where they teach you just about everything you could imagine about game design and development. If you've ever wanted to get into that kind of field, or if you're just interested in you know, development, programming, or graphic design in general, I suggest you go and look at some of their courses, because a lot of what they teach you can apply to any situation in those kind of fields of work. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to gaming. But that's a really nice system they have. Pretty much can do whatever you want to in terms of the pace of going through the class. You do it on your own time. I actually still, to this day, have a DirectX programming course module that I haven't started yet, and it's been sitting there for about, I guess, 8 years now. So I could go back and take it at any time if I wanted to, and that's pretty much what you can do there. It's just at your own pace. But I was looking through their forums one day, looking for a solution to a problem I was having in one of the modules, and I saw this forum at the very bottom, forum category at the very bottom of their forums called Student Game Challenges. And I thought, that sounds interesting. Let me go check it out. And what it was is a kind of a competition between students to see who could make a game that met certain criteria and score better than other students that are participating in the challenge. And there would be a topic that you'd have to make a game for. And when I was looking at that, it was during their 8th student game challenge. Topic was RPGs, and I figured, you know what, being the RPG freak I am, I should probably enter this. And even though I basically was a noob at programming, I decided, well, let's see what happens. So I entered it, and for I think about the first week and a half or so, I actually was working on a kind of extending an existing RPG example program that they give you in the 5th chapter of the first module of the C++ for game developers book. That was essentially just kind of an example RPG. Gives you some just basic stuff like battling monsters, stats, health, that kind of thing. And I was adding in spells, jobs, new races, different stat combinations based on the race and the job, the navigation system, towns, more monsters, more weapons, more equipment. Just really just kind of fleshing it out a lot. And after about a week and a half, I thought, you know what, I probably shouldn't just make something that already exists. I should make something from scratch because I would learn more that way and it would be a little more interesting. So I was trying to figure out what to make, and I couldn't think of what I could do. And I decided on making what I called them back then was a space RPG, because I didn't know they were called 4X games. Didn't know that's what the genre was called. So I've been playing a lot of Stars and Sins of a Solar Empire, and it's kind of like really kind of interested in that genre at that point in time. And so I started working on it. The game's first name was Planet Bomber. I don't know if that's a widely known fact. And that's pretty much what it was, a bloody planet bombing simulator. It was very annoying, very boring, and tedious. So that was the first version of it. Second version is 0.2. I added in ship-to-ship battles and stations to repair ships at. And then the third version, 0.3, added in the market system, so you can go in and buy new ships, new weapons, and whatnot. Added in tech merchants that you could access sometimes to upgrade your ship and things. And kind of fleshed out the game a little bit more, added a little bit of story in. And fixed some pretty nasty bugs that were actual showstopper bugs that would cause the game to essentially crash. Not literally crash, but essentially by just running through whatever menu options you were currently in the menu you're currently in, and then just hitting the game over screen without you doing anything else. It would just hit something and just like tumble over itself. And I and some other guys that were trying to figure out what they were and what was causing them called them death rolls, because you would hit something, essentially just roll to the game over screen. So fixed those, and at the end of the thing, submitted it, and I ended up winning. And it was interesting because I don't actually have the Excel sheet that they gave me back then, because the judges would send Excel sheets to the different competitors and essentially give them their gradings and whatnot. And I may have it somewhere buried in, I don't know, 15 folder deep folder structure from one of my older systems, but I don't know where it's at right now, or if I even have it. But essentially, they said that I didn't win because of the cleanliness of my code, or the correctness of it, or even the completeness of it. Though I did play a little bit more of a part than the other two. It said that they gave me essentially really high scores, and eventually decided I was going to be the one that would win it, based pretty much entirely on the fact that the idea I had for the game was more complete than other games that were being made, and also that the idea was more interesting. That it kind of grabbed their attention in specific ways, and that they were really interested to see where the game would go after this. And I pretty much heard that back from a lot of people that had been helping me work on the game, as far as debugging it and following it during the challenge, both from people that were just watching the challenge and actual other competitors too. So I decided to continue working on it after that, and that went up to about mid 2008, and decided to put it on the back burner then because work was taking up more time and other projects were taking up time as well, and just didn't really have enough time to dedicate to working on it. So I shelved it for a while until 2011. I think it was March in 2011 or somewhere in there. Maybe it was April, I'm not sure. It was somewhere between March and June, I think, somewhere in that range. I decided to pull it out of the closet and start working on it again. And actually I wanted to completely recode it for 0.5. And the reason I wanted to do that for was because the existing code for 0.4 build 2 was insane. That's the best way to put it. It was so bloated that it would just be easier to rewrite the entire thing than to from scratch, than to work on it. And the number of lines of code was insane. It had, I think it was between 126,000 and 130,000 lines of code, which is a lot of code to write in 8 weeks. Or, no, 10 weeks, because it was a 10-week challenge. Was it 10 or 8? It was either 10 or 8, I'm not sure. It was the first one they had done at that length, whichever length it was. But, and the reason for it was really because I was still new at coding. I didn't have any frigging idea what I was doing half the time. And I really made some just insane decisions on how to code things that ended up just causing so many lines to be added and that didn't need to be. To kind of put it into perspective, by the time I was done recoding it in, I think it was on February of 2013, the number of lines of code in the entire program to do the same thing that the old version did was only about 22,000 lines of code. So I literally cut over 100,000 lines of code, and it still worked just like it did before. That's how much code bloat there was. And then from there, I went and added even more stuff, and then started doing a finished 0.5 and released 0.5 build 1, and then continued working on builds for 0.5 in a kind of a one additional week basis per build. So build 1 was 1 week, 2 was 2 weeks, 3 was 3 weeks, 4 was 5 weeks, I think, because I think 1 week the flu just totally kicked my arse, and then 5 was like 6 weeks or something. And at the end of the 5th build, the amount of code was still only about 27,000 lines of code, but it had about, I'm going to say probably 85 to 90% more content in it in terms of new features and items and weapons and things and ships than 0.5 did. So, and by association 0.4. So still almost 100,000 lines of code less, but way more stuff in it. That's just how bad 0.4 was in terms of just how much extraneous unneeded code there was. Right now I'm working on build 6, like I mentioned before. What the main goal with 6 was just to implement the modding system, and that was pretty much it. Though there was some things from build 5 that still had to be done. Those were going to be done in there. And then I began realizing there was a lot of things that I should do before I added in some of the more broader sweeping changes, like an economic system, trade system, that kind of stuff. Because a lot of things would have to change. No, Teddy's dead. A lot of things have to change based on stuff that would be added later. So, like for example, part of the economic system being added in would be an upgrade to the station market system, adding in new menus, new items, and things like that. However, by doing that, I'd also have to then go through and redo the ship classes, and a lot of different things with the ships would have to change. And that would, in association, also have to change a couple of things with stations, which would then change things with the economic system. So instead of having to change all of that stuff after the economic system is put in, and having to be a lot more complicated, change it before I put the economic system in, and not have to deal with all that extra stuff. That's essentially why 0.6 has taken so much longer than I thought it would initially. It's because there's new things being added in all the time, as I'm thinking of, okay, this needs to be in here, I don't know why I didn't think of it before, I'm an idiot. Those kind of situations happening. So, initially I thought that 0.6 would be done by, like right now, but that's not going to happen. So, I really don't know when, in the grand scheme of things, the game is going to be released. Hopefully between 2019 and I guess I'll say 2022, just to give a proper range. Been working on the game for a pretty long time, but at the same time, some of the better games that have been released and that are going to be released have a really long development lifespan. Of course, there's also evidence for the really bad games that have been released taking a long time too. Duke Nukem Forever. Actually, I thought Duke Nukem Forever wasn't that bad. Now, it wasn't as good as people hoped it would be, and I thought it would be, but it wasn't as bad as people made it out to me. Though that was the first Duke Nukem game I ever played, all the way through. So I don't know. I actually bought the Megaton edition on Steam. Still haven't played any of those yet though. But yeah, so it's just taking a long time. Will continue to take a long time. Nothing really can do to change that besides hiring people to help with it. And so that's pretty much all that stuff for the game. So we're going to talk about the channel now. Mainly what the channel's been used for up to this point is for releasing videos and audio for the updates. Essentially, we're on a bi-monthly update kind of schedule where I work on stuff for 2 months and release whatever progress has been done on ModDB, and then upload videos, developer vlogs, and music tests and things onto the channel. Link them to the ModDB news article for that. What's going to happen now, though, is I'm also going to have videos that I'll be releasing sporadically in between updates for this information that I'll be going over, as well as a more lore-based kind of video series that will be kind of interactive. You'll be able to click on a particular topic, it'll take you to another video, another series of topics related to the first one, so on and so forth, until you get to the one that'll have all the information in it. I may do it so it's actually all in the same video, so it's kind of like a well, I don't know if that would really work though, because if I did it that way, I'd have to eventually move on to like the first topic and do things. I think I'll just stick with the multi-video solution, and I'll be able to go through the different types of lore and learn about the races and the different events. There's also a lot of that on the website right now, though be aware that the website is currently being recreated at the moment. I'm recreating it with Bootstrap, so it's a little more user-friendly and not quite so static. So that's still ongoing. That's not actually happening on the site right now. The site's still the old version, but pretty soon it'll be switched over to the new version, hopefully. But there's a lot of stuff there you can go read on the lore side of things. You can also download any of the builds that we have currently available from there. There will be a modding guide eventually uploaded to the channel and linked on the website as well. And that's pretty much how this channel will be used for the moment until I actually get a release, like a teaser trailer or something, going forward when we're closer to release. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments section. And if what you heard tonight interested you in any way, feel free to subscribe to the channel, keep you up to date on the game. You can also go to our ModDB page for the game and watch it, so you're up to date with that as well. And I will see you in one of the other videos.